Orkney was known for having representatives from all over the country. It was like a zoo or a freak show. Luxury and misery right next to each other. The people of dozens of nations were bustling in the streets. The population became polarized. Influential and wealthy people have succeeded in consolidating their power and position through laws. As a result, for young men, the only way to prevail seemed to be by breaking the rules and being aggressive. Their anger turned them against those they thought were oppressing them. Violent crimes against high-status people have increased, and the police, paralyzed by corruption and bureaucracy, have been unable to keep things under control. The rich defended themselves using the resources at their disposal. Bounties were set on the heads of the culprits, and later on the suspects or potential perpetrators as well, in an attempt to make people too terrified to raise even their voice against the powerful. Some people saw a good opportunity to stand out by grabbing high sums for short work and an increase in status by letting their peers know they aren't afraid to kill, and the elite stood up for them against the disgraced police. The age of bounty hunters has begun. Two men, both in impeccable attire, walked in the hallway leading out of one of the meeting rooms of the modern high-rise building towering over its neighbors. The shorter man spoke. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I remember, sir, you said you would also say something about my partner. He has a reason to be afraid." Mr. Leonardo walked on, leaving his frightened acquaintance alone. He said nothing else. That was enough for an icy terror to squeeze the throat of the listener, even if he was not the one being threatened. He spoke to the most powerful man known to him, so he knew he would soon have to say farewell to a large sum of money. Honor had much to part with. He was a co-founder of the weapon company Altrion, along with two other individuals, with Aladdin, his boss, and the one towards whom the harsh words were directed by Mr. Leonardo. "We need to get the best man to protect him," he thought. "This is serious. If this monster kills Krieg, there is no more info. We need the info." Yes, the information was much needed. According to the rumors, the most powerful man in the world has been for a long time working on developing some bleeding-edge, groundbreaking weapons technology. And releasing such instruments on the market can change a great many things, and that's why Honor wanted to know a lot. And yes, he was concerned foremost about the market. He considered talking to the information hunter, but it only made him purse his mouth wryly, since he always found him unreliable. And for a good reason. A sigh of relief left his lungs, for he survived the encounter. With trembling hands, he immediately sent a message to contact the best bounty hunter in the system. Demalochis fiddled with the grappling hook built into his forearm guard when his communicator began beeping. He sat in a rundown restaurant. The dim light and the smoke that makes your eyes water made him barely able to make out the overage singer screeching to the weak rock music. Which was perhaps for the better, for his hand on its own accord started creeping towards the trigger. "I'm at the square," Honor said through the phone. Demalochis gave instructions. "You should see the fast food restaurant. Face the door and go left, follow the railway line. After 100 meters there will be a pub around the corner on the left. Go in there. Red dirt." He wasn't wearing his helmet, so he glanced at the spare display under the armor on his left arm. As Honor walked, Dema watched through the radar to see if he was arriving with bodyguards. The radar didn't detect any threat nearby either. He was surprised by the phenomenon. He actually comes alone. Must be desperate, he thought. Come in. I sit to the right by the wall. I'm wearing a green coat. He sat close to the door to make it easier for him to escape if he had to. His armor was hidden under the thick cloth. He didn't want to stand out. Oner entered, took a seat. Even then, he was a little scared. This was the first time he saw the dreaded assassin face to face. He had a hard time getting used to being frightened by the one he was talking to. He usually dominated his discourses. He placed a tablet on the table, showing a picture to the bounty hunter. His face twitched slightly as he leaned close to start a memorized proposal in a muffled voice. I know it's unusual, but in this case I cannot specify the target. But there is a high probability that there is someone in the way. He pointed at the photo. As far as I know, someone is to kill him, and he should be dealt with. Forget it, Demolokis interrupted. I'm an assassin, not a babysitter. You'll be handsomely rewarded, sir, Oner said. My contacts and support are not negligible even for you. I don't need you. You wouldn't be working as a bodyguard. It wouldn't taint your reputation, he assured the bounty hunter. The whole point of the action would be to keep it a secret. Oner knew what he was doing. He outlined the possibilities so that it would impress Demolokis' desire for adventure, displaying its importance according to Demos' values. Secrets are exciting. Stealth and reconnaissance, this has already piqued Demos' interest, which Oner, who was accustomed to negotiation, noticed. He thought it was time to deploy his trump card. He pulled up additional images. He's Krieg here, you probably already know this. He's the one to watch. Yes, he lives with his daughter. Here's a picture. The discourse did not last long. Demolokis took the role of the sentry. Krieg was brushing his teeth in his nightgown. His unfinished duties stirred up frustrating thoughts in his head. For example, he had to look for a housekeeper because she had been the victim of a murder. The security team assumed someone wanted to get information by searching the house. It's incredibly hard to find a reliable person, he shook his head, then took water in his mouth, but instead of rinsing, he screamed aloud, spitting water everywhere. The training flashed in his mind. He knew his first task was to get a weapon. He boldly jumped through the bathroom door and threw himself behind the couch. For a short time, panic overwhelmed his mind, confusing him under the weak shelter of the furniture, despite being prepared for such situations. Oner said they could come for me, but he didn't think it was gonna be so soon. This, of course, zigzagged through his mind so quickly that he didn't have time to articulate it, especially because he had taken a hold of himself and with a pistol he fished out from under his seat, opened fire on the armored figure perched in the middle of the room. Surprisingly, he actually hit the person, who had not remained idle. He jumped over the piece of furniture without even caring about the bullets and sparks bouncing off his armor, and after a punch, he pulled a knife on the billionaire. Krieg felt the breath of the heated blade on him, as well as of the angry bounty hunters. Listen here. As the words passed through the air filter, they became rough and a little muffled. If I wanted to kill you, I would have done it. Demolokis told Krieg, the person he was assigned to protect, then got off him. Didn't even move. Why did he open fire? Demolokis growled. I'm here to protect you. You can get dressed. I turned away. Krieg, at the sight of the battle armor, immediately had thought of assassination. In fact, he still didn't want to believe that his so-called protector had arrived without malicious intent. Demolokis wasn't sulking for long. He turned to lay eyes on the most beautiful princess he had ever seen. Looking into the huge, pure eyes, he felt lost, as if he had fallen into a well. Her face flushed with excitement, her hair falling in soft waves on her shoulders. Her appearance was even more glamorous than in the picture. The camera was unable to show her perfection. The eyes of the beauty, however, were opened so wide by terror. She stood frozen in the doorway, for she recognized the infamous bounty hunter from his attire, so she knew she had no chance of defending her father. The head of the family hurried to reassure her. "Don't worry, Eve. He's a friend now. He will take care of us." His anxious words were accompanied by wide, flailing gestures. He didn't want Eve to upset the man who's so quick to anger. "I suggest you wait in the other room." He turned to Demologis, a little reassured, but quietly cursing himself for not taking the time to look for a new housekeeper. "My daughter will offer you a drink. Mr. Ronald Chavez will be here in minutes. We'll discuss the details," he said with disguised reprehension as he left the room. With one eye, he examined the bullet marks on the wall. He regretted shooting at Demologis. Eve quickly poured a glass of juice and handed it to the bounty hunter because the man did not accept any alcoholic beverages. It looked almost ridiculous as the huge man, born to fight, stood helplessly with plum juice in his hand. "Come on, sit down," she encouraged cordially. "I'd rather stand." He felt a little tense, not accustomed to sincere kindness. "You don't like it?" Eve looked at the refresher. "I can't drink while wearing a helmet. Do you have straws?" She started laughing. "Excuse me, miss, or is it Mrs.?" Demologis asked in a melodic voice. Eve blushed slightly. "Miss." "I see," smiled the bounty hunter. "How well do you know Mr. Chavez?" Two birds with one stone. He wanted to converse with the lady and also to gather information. Eve didn't know why she was pulling out the drawer when she could only get straws from the chamber. Nor did she understand why she was so embarrassed in the man's presence, even though he had almost sliced up her father just a few minutes ago. The man was both dizzyingly masculine and terribly repulsive. Eve could have vomited thinking about killing people as someone's profession. Yet she was impressed by the intrepid force and endless confidence that surrounded the man. Demologis was the only one whose name even Mr. Leonardo raised his head to hear. "Found it!" Eve closed the door behind her, but it was too late. The man had already gotten rid of the headgear and made himself comfortable in one of the armchairs. He took the straw anyway. Eve took a furtive glance at the man's exposed face, a rare sight indeed. His scorched countenance seemed surprisingly gentle. Their gazes met as the owner of the ingenuous face looked at the slightly flushed young lady with undisguised admiration. Demologis did not allow himself to be influenced by his feelings. Over the years, he has learned that emotions can easily lead astray, and he may have been the best because he also learned how to keep them under control without becoming insensitive. Eve felt excited near the man. Until then, she had met very few with whom she would even have had a chance to start a relationship. She was raised as a princess under her father's protective wings, perhaps protected from too many things. It's different this time, Dema thought. While I shouldn't be distracted while I have a contract, there is no real assignment now, no specific goal on which to focus. There is no reason for me to direct my full attention to this task. The operating system is on standby, the radar is working continuously. I get an alert if there is a serious threat. Would you like to have a conversation with me? The warrior looked up from his thoughts. He asked the question right away because he thought that if he hesitated, he might seem uncertain. Well, I'm not sure. Or after all, the girl was very uncomfortable with the unexpected situation. Her eyes anxiously darted everywhere. She noticed a knife and other weapons pinned to a holder hanging from the killer's belt. You should ask Dad what he thinks of the two of us. I mean, you know... Your father is a brave man, Demologis said, flashing his devious half-smile. But I doubt he would stand up to me. He wasn't wrong. Krieg tried to protect her from situations such as this, but this time Eve had to communicate her feelings to a man herself. She struggled to gather her theoretical knowledge. I admire what you're capable of, but you use your abilities to do bad things. For example, I protect your father. It was then that the alarm began to beep through the hidden speakers of the protective suit. This is bad. Demologis picked up his helmet and raised a finger. Don't move. Eve didn't understand what was happening, but the bounty hunter's tone was so demanding that she stiffened in involuntary obedience. The radar signaled because it detected that something was interfering with the propagation of the emitted electromagnetic waves. Demologis put on his helmet in vain. He still didn't know where the enemy was. The radar tried to locate the source of the interfering signal automatically. No success. They heard an explosion. Demo burst into the room with a gun in his hand, surveying the terrain in a second. The armor's face and weapon recognition system worked in perfect harmony with his brain. Krieg got dressed. He lies on the ground, covered with blood. It looks like his own. Honor, with his mouth open, is beside the dying man. A grenade without a pin on the doorstep, probably a similar one, punched a hole in the sidewall. The killer is trying to escape in the hallway. Dema sent some bullets after him, but had a hard time aiming because of the detonation that had taken place in the meantime. He shot Honor and then chased the killer. With the help of the noise filter, he could still hear what Eve, clinging to the doorknob, said in a low voice. For example, you killed my godfather? The attacker was incredibly fast. His technical equipment was far below that of Demologis, but no complicated instruments are required for running. He scattered some short delay time grenades, so Demo was forced to slow down because the shock waves would have confused his instruments. Turning sideways, he decelerated, firing non-stop, but the explosive charges only destroyed the wall in front of him. The protruding metal claws of the soles of his boots cut long strips of the hand-woven Persian rug. The stranger had just had enough time to spurt until the bend in the hallway. Demo changed weapons, then shot the harpoon of his forearm guard into the opposite wall and jumped up, pulling himself all the way to the corner with the wire rope. There he fired almost blindly, relying on his instincts, which was a direct hit. The tongues of flame splattered the pieces of armor, the slayer tumbling onward, erratically balancing with his hands. On its back, the sheets, formed of hollow, Kevlar-alloyed glass ceramic balls, 100 mm in diameter, began to decay. A heat shield made from a combination of exceptionally strong adhesive and these balls protected the armor's owner from overheating due to external sources. The membrane and the balls together provided the unique properties of the coating, which allowed the man to continue his journey at an unbroken pace. Unlike Demologis, who had a grenade, normally used against tanks, explode between his legs. The stranger apparently liked this weapon. The bounty hunter slammed into the ceiling from the shockwave and then fell back into the basement, plowing through the weakened floor because of the weight of his armor. Dema was sitting on the rubble-covered bed in the former bedroom of the shattered suite. He got rid of most of his armor and examined his wounds. They weren't serious. Opposite, on the intact sofa, Eve, completely devastated. "It was your fault," Dema began. "If you wouldn't have asked me to take off my helmet, I'd have noticed the intrusion in time." Eve shook her head, unable to comprehend. She didn't really understand what was happening around her. "It doesn't matter now. I'll take you to the base. You'll be safe there. The radar broke, but I'll switch the armor, then find and execute the killer." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Eve looked up. "And leave the killer alone. Nobody should die because of me." "What did you say?" only Demologis could have uttered a simple question in such a terrifyingly commanding voice that made Eve shudder with a cold feeling. Demologis was neither loud nor threatening, yet, because of his occupation and fighting power, he was expected to kill. Eve stood up trembling. She felt naked, as vulnerable as the moth that has already faded from being just walloped to the ground from the air with one hand. Demologis straightened up. Even covered with wounds, he was terribly assertive. Ruled the room, deciding over life and death. He took a step toward her, standing close to her. Eve herself didn't know what to do. Her instincts and alarm took control. With a naive thought, she pulled a knife out of the man's belt and lunged it somewhere around his shoulder. She didn't try to kill him, she just wanted to escape, get out of there. Out of the hellish place where her life had collapsed in a few minutes, and she was afraid that it would bury her underneath. Demologis caught Eve's hand before she could do significant damage. He peeled her fingers off the handle. It was nice to hold a delicate female hand in his palm. He turned his head halfway, grimacing. "Get lost," he said, pushing the girl so hard that she fell over the couch. She got up and ran, bushwhacking her way through the security guards in a hurry to help her. She rushed onwards with blind terror. The survival instinct took over her. Demologis examined his shoulder. The knife barely penetrated the cut-resistant protective garment, which was made with innovative knitting machines of an extremely high molecular weight polyethylene, with a combination of high-density woven Exxon fibers and other special materials. He seriously thought about killing the girl. It would have been a single move. He had done it countless times. Yet, there and then, something held him back. He was later ashamed of himself for this. Although the girl's outrage over the death of the Godfather is justified, I had to kill him because he could have spread bad news about the failed task. Plus, I couldn't even know he was the Godfather. He didn't dwell on the past. It doesn't matter now. Aladdin stood over the corpse bags, while the chief of security staff reported to him what had happened. There was a security camera in the room where the deaths occurred. They watched the post-teeth brushing incident rather confused, and then when the unknown bounty hunter killed Krieg and Demologis killed Honor. Aladdin didn't know what had happened, only that he wanted revenge. Mr. Leonardo was pleased. It was a business that could only come out favorably for him. From this he was filled with reassurance, for everything was going according to plan.